mais de 30 anos, para sorte nossa, né? Tá ok? Mais de 100 dos seus artigos sobre família, casamento, educação, saúde, sexualidade foram publicados no New York Times, no Union Reader e no Psychotherapy Network. Durante 6 anos, ela também escreveu uma coluna chamada A Nova Família, para uma revista que eu especialmente era fã, que chama Child Magazine, uma revista muito, muito legal. Infelizmente, coisa boa acaba também. Essa revista era a revista que eu mais gostava. Bom, agora ela responde a pergunta dos leitores semanalmente no Huffington Post e, além disso, também contribui para uma série de revistas online. Em 2000, ela começou a colaborar com a Grace Hall e, desde então, essa parceria das duas, esse encontro mágico, né, que ajudou a transformar, acho que a vida dela e a nossa também, basicamente resultou em 3 livros, que mais que livros são 3 best-sellers e meio que uma bíblia de um monte de mãe que a gente conhece. É Encantadora de Bebês, Mais Segredos de uma Encantadora de Bebês, para crianças de 1 a 3 anos, e a Encantadora de Bebês resolve todos os seus problemas. Ela está lançando um livro novo, está aqui para vender, que é A Encantadora de Famílias. Já está disponível aqui para a gente, que fala da construção, do gerenciamento da família, enfim, que basicamente é o tema da palestra da Melinda. Para a gente é uma honra ter você aqui conosco. Bem-vinda.
I hope the translation works. You know, that was the first time I ever asked an audience. Okay. That was the first time I've ever asked an audience to send pictures of their children. And I'm going to do it from now on. I added a few of my own. All the blonde children belong to my daughter. And there were some pictures of children. I love to take pictures of children wherever I go in the world. And there were some pictures in Paris as well. Aren't they great? I mean, I love them. Every time I watch that video, it brought a smile to my face. And I knew it would make you smile too. How could it not make mothers smile to see faces like that? They're so curious and adorable and energetic and creative, just so full of life. But I know a lot about you already. First of all, because I've met a bunch of you, and you've been such a great welcome. I want to come back every year. But you're not just mothers. You're strong, smart women. And you're also the heart of the family. A few years ago, when some researchers asked students at various universities in Brazil, in Rio actually, who's the most important person in the family? Nearly half of them, 47%, said the mother, Mike. And only 13% said the father, and a mere 6% said both parents. But this is a tough time to be the heart of the family, because society's going through a lot of changes, and I know Brazil is, and in the United States as well. And also, so many eyes are on me. You have so much on your shoulders, so much responsibility. It's exhausting to be a mother. But being the heart of the family also means that you have the power. The power to really help your family and guide your family through tough times. And at the end of this hour, I hope that you will, what I would like is for you not to feel like you're not spending enough time with your kids. I don't want you to think you're not doing enough for them. I want you to stop feeling guilty. And I want you to walk out of here filled with the feeling that you're confident and proud of yourselves, and that your head will be filled with new ideas about how to manage your family and take care of the people that you love If we have time, we'll show the video again after the questions, but I'm not sure we will. But I want you to look at your children, and if you have husbands, because I know some of you are probably single mothers, some of you may be divorced, some of you may be partnered, others married. If you have partners, I hope you look at them and your children through family-focused eyes. But I think I should start with baby whispering. I've gotten the impression that there are many fans in the room. Raise your hand if you've read the books. Quite a few of you. That's great. I want to tell you a little bit about how I see.
Have a little delay.
I was wondering how the translation was going to work. Now I understand. I want to tell you a little bit about baby whispering and how I met Tracy Hawk, who unfortunately, I don't know if you know, but Tracy unfortunately passed away at age 44, shortly before the third book came out. It was so sad, and I really feel like I lost a friend, because we had an amazing collaboration. But when I first heard about Baby Whisperer, it was in 1999, which was a year after the movie The Horse Whisperer came out. And I know it came out in Brazil too. And supposedly my agent who set up this meeting said, there's this nanny in Los Angeles, and she can do for babies what the Robert Redford character in the movies does for horses, which is calm them and communicate with them. So I said, okay, I'll go. But I was a little bit skeptical, because at that point, I had heard Tracy had a lot of celebrity clients. She had Madonna and Michael J. Fox and Jodie Foster and Mary Lou Henner. But I wasn't sure. I had interviewed a lot of parenting experts by then, and I thought, how great could she be? And then I flew out to California. She met me at the airport, and I'm not good at accents, so I'm not even going to try. But she had this wonderful British accent. And she met me at the airport. I will do it once. And she said, come on, love, I have a client now. She whisked me off to this person who was very much not a celebrity. And the mother met us at the door. She looked like she hadn't slept for 3 days, maybe 3 weeks. And tears were streaming down her face. And she's going, she's got a baby. I don't know what to do. I'm miserable. I hope you can help me. Thank you for coming. Tracy put out her arm. She took the baby. She just stood there and held the baby close to her heart. And in his little ear, she went, all of a sudden, this little baby started to calm down. Tracy had an amazing way with babies. They could feel her calm. And I really believe they could sense her confidence also. I could almost hear that little baby, who was about 3 weeks old, I could almost hear him thinking, wow, this lady really knows what she's doing. Anyway, I would see lots and lots of scenes like that, and I realized that Tracy was really very special. And over the next 3 years, I followed her around, we talked endlessly, and we ended up writing 3 books about babies and toddlers. And that was really most where her concentration was at the time. Well, even from the beginning, though, we talked about how important the whole family was. In the very first book, we talked about the fact, we refer to it as the whole family approach. Tracy would say to a new mother, don't let him become king baby. And she said, he should become part of your household, not its ruler. You have to take care of him, but you also have to take care of yourself, take care of your marriage, and if there were other children at home, she would say, the whole family. Now this was a very hard thing for mothers, even in 1999. Tracy and I used to call it, they were swept up in what we called the happiness epidemic. They wanted their kids to be happy all the time. This is why I chose happy for the background of that song, that video. And so her mommy and me have the mothers sit in a circle with the little babies who are about 9 months old in between their legs. And then Tracy would lead, she'd start singing, which I know you sing here too. Itsy bitsy spider came down the water spout, down came the rain. And all of the mothers would sing along, and they'd do the arm movements, and when the song was finished, they'd all go, "Yay, good job, good job." And the 9-month-old would kind of look up, and they were sort of fascinated by what was going on, but they really didn't have a clue, and they hadn't moved. Now, Tracy was always really kind to mothers, and she was always very tactful. But it was very important to her, and those of you who've read the books know, that she always took the baby's perspective. So she'd look at these mothers and she'd say, "Mom, why are you clapping? I didn't do anything yet." And the mothers would laugh because they got it, they understood it. Tracy's message was always very clear. It was basically in one word, enough. Enough toys, enough stimulation, enough praise. Don't buy anything else that squeaks, rattles, jiggles, or wiggles. And she also was very, very conscious. If you read the books, you know that her techniques were pretty simple and straightforward. They asked you to slow down, be more conscious, and remember to treat your baby with respect, because your baby is a separate, unique individual. And one of my favorite things that she did was when she had parenting groups, even before the babies were born, and she'd ask the father to lie on the ground. And she'd say, "Please close your eyes." And then she'd come along and she'd lift the guy's legs up, and his eyes would pop open. And she'd say, "See, that's how your baby feels when you just come along and diaper him without telling him what you're about to do." The other thing that Tracy was very, very big on was she was very insistent that you should leave your baby on his or her own for a while. We'll say her in this paragraph. So she would say to her mother, "Put her in the crib, put her on the floor, put her in an infancy, someplace where she's safe, and then walk away." Because it's very important for your baby to start learning to become independent. And the new mother would think, that sounds strange, a baby, independent? But the interesting thing is that subsequent research has proven that Tracy was right. That the more a child is allowed to experiment with their environment, the more that they feel mastery and a sense of confidence. She also used to tell mothers, don't rush in right away. And that also is proven today, that when children are told they have to wait, even as babies, they develop self-soothing skills. And they are also, that later translates into self-control, which is probably one of the most important things you can give a child, not just a baby. Well, family whispering is very much like baby whispering. It also asks you to slow down, be more conscious, and help everyone become independent. But the focus changes from the child to the whole family. So it's not just about mother and child. There are more people in the family. All people matter. And all the relationships matter, not just mother and child. As a result, everyone's needs are met in the family, not just the children, which is often what happens today in our child-centered families. Now, make no mistake, I want to be very clear here. Family whispering is not a new kind of parenting. I don't want you to start taking notes, and it's an attitude. And what it requires, and I don't know how this is going to translate, is family thinking. That means seeing the whole, not just one part. Now, I'm going to give you an example that I use in the book of a family called the Wentworths, and I'll show you how this works, how family think works. The Wentworths, Jane and Bart, had a little girl named Caitlin, and she was an angel place, and those of you who have angel babies know that's so easy. You know, you can take them every place, they sleep well, they eat well. Along came, 3 years later, along came Noah. Noah was a touchy baby. And he had trouble sleeping and eating. He was very sensitive to noise and to light, and he cried a lot. So for Jane, it was much easier to be Caitlin's mother than it was to be Noah's mother. Now, how many of you have second children? Raise your hand. Good. So you all know that this is true. When you add children, 1 and 1 do not make 2. It feels like 10, especially in the beginning. When the second one comes along, it disrupts the whole household. Everything changes. And it's especially difficult if the second child, now I'm going to ask you again, how many of you had a second child that was a little bit harder than the first one? And that's very often the case. Not always, but it's very often the case. And so when you have a child that's even more difficult, it can be really challenging, especially to the mother. Now, I'm going to explain why this is true through the lens of family thinking. All families are different. I often say they're like snowflakes. No two are the same. But there are the same 3 elements that make a family what it is. Okay, the first element, the first factor, is the individuals. Who's in the family? What are their personalities? I'm talking about now, not just the kids and the adults. Who's in the family? Their personalities, their history. 2, the relationships. How do the twosome get along? And 3 is the context. So by context, I mean the setting or the circumstances that affect the family. And there are many, many things in context. For example, the extended family, the neighborhood, the schools, the workplace, how much time parents can get off of work. Everything that's going on in the world affects a family. For example, right now, you could say in Brazil, it's harder to be a family because you're having economic problems in the country than it is during times when you're not having. So everything outside also affects the family. Well, in the case of the Wentworths, Jane was very lucky because the 3 factors worked in her advantage. The individuals were strong and healthy. They had good relationships. Jane and her husband got along very well. And Caitlin felt secure in both of their love. She had just started a new preschool, but luckily in that preschool, the teacher made a big deal. Oh, Caitlin is a big sister now. So that made her proud. They lived in a good neighborhood, so Jane could take walks, and that helped relieve her stress. She had a mother and a sister who lived nearby, and they had a lot of friends who brought casseroles and did errands for them. Now imagine how different it would have been if any one of those factors, the individuals, the relationships, or the context had been different. What if Caitlin had been a less adaptable child? Having a brother would not have been as easy for her. What if the father, he worked for himself, what if he traveled or, worked long hours? What if there was no extended family nearby? What if they lived in a war-torn country instead of the U.S., which is where this family lived? The 3 factors really make a huge difference, and they also remind you that what happens to one person in a family happens to everyone. So if, for example, one of the individuals is sick, whether it's a child or an adult, everybody's routine is changed. If one of the twosomes is having a rough time, say the parents are arguing or the siblings are arguing, everybody in the household absorbs their anger. And if the context is difficult for either an individual, say a child goes to a new school or the family has to move, affects everybody. Now, the family think, and these three factors, they give us more information than just looking at the child. It reminds you to look at everything that's happening. And if you read the earlier books, we do that with babies too. We say, what else is going on in the household? But it also helps you make better decisions and solve problems better, because now the whole family becomes part of the solution. This may be difficult for some of you. And the reason I say that is because what Tracy and I saw in 1999 is even more true today. You are very, very, very focused on your children. Do I see nods? And you feel responsible. Now, part of this is cultural. Women have been brought up to believe it's our job to take care of the children, run the household, and to look beautiful while we're doing it. And if we didn't get this message from our mothers, we get it from the media. And you see these images of women who are always perfectly dressed, and they always look like they're doing everything effortlessly. As one mother said to me, I will never be a magazine mother. Now, again, it depends on the culture. In the U.S., many, many women are over-responsible. I think when Pamela Druckerman talks to you, she's going to tell you that in France, not so much. So I have a little experiment planned for you, and I want to see how the Brazilian women do. On your seat, you might have found a piece of paper. I don't have a copy of it, but it's in Portuguese anyway, so I can't read it. But I want you to take a look at the piece of paper. And it has two checklists. And on one side, I hope the translation is correct, on one side is checklist A, why I do most of it. And the it refers to everything having to do with your household. So it could be taking care of the kids, doing the household chores, volunteering at school, paying bills, you name it, whatever goes on in the household. That's checklist A. Checklist B is why I think I do enough. And again, I apologize if the translation is wrong. Now, I don't want you to take it now. It's perfect? I don't want you to take the test now. I'd like you, if you have a partner, bring it home and do it with your partner. But just for now, I want you to look at the paper and decide which one you should take. Everybody who picked checklist A, hold the paper up. Wave the paper. Whoa, look around the room. Okay, I've been told that you're a lot like American mothers, and you just proved it. So here's the interesting thing. In the United States, and I'm sure it's true here too, men do twice as much housework and 3 times as much child care as they did in 1966, which was when I got married. And in Brazil, I would bet that your husbands do way more than their fathers or your father. Yes? Okay. So then why is everyone holding up the white paper? Why do so many women complain? Why do so many couples have chore wars, as we call them in the United States? Guerras domésticas. Well, one reason is that women still do more. And they tend to be doing more at night, especially when the kids are having fun and the dad's doing what he wants for leisure time. The women are catching up on their own chores, or they're finally getting to something they wanted to do. Another reason is that women tend to do the thinking work. Who in your household keeps lists, like a grocery list? Or if you're okay, who in your household remembers that it's time to toilet paper left. I knew the answers I would get. You know, there were a few times when I was thinking about this talk and I said, what if they don't answer that way? Anyway. The problem is that chore wars are bad for a family. All arguments are bad for a family. I mean, but these are usually daily, sometimes very angry arguments that pollute the air that everyone breathes. Dad's exhausted. They are both always rushing. There's never time. They may have the occasional date night, or maybe they'll even send the kids overnight to the grandparents' house. But that's not enough to sustain their relationships. So some end up at therapists, with all apologies to therapists in the room. And when they go to the therapist, most of the time, what the therapist will do is first she'll address each of the individuals. Remember our 3 factors. So she'll address each of the individuals and she'll say, Mom, you know, you have to relax your standards a little. Or don't do everything so quickly. Give Dad a chance to do it. And then she'll turn to the man and she'll say, you know, you gotta try a little harder. You have to start noticing things. And then the therapist will address the relationship and maybe work on communication skills. And also ask a very good question, which is, are you sure you're really just arguing about housework, or is there some deeper problem going on in the marriage? Now that's all very good advice. But here's the interesting thing. There are other people, the other individuals in the family, namely the children, are members of the family too. In fact, much of the mess is theirs. Much of the work is because of the children. And yet, in child-centered households, it never occurs to either parent to get the children involved. Parents make excuses for their kids, they have too much homework, they're too young. Okay. I'm here today to suggest that there is another alternative, and it's called the family co-op. In a child-centered household, in a family-centered household, the children and the adults run the house together. They run the family together. And this is how it works. You know, all over the world, workers have organized cooperatives as a more equitable way of doing business. I know that they have them in Brazil as well. And in a co-op, a co-op is run and managed by the people who benefit from it. So doesn't it make sense to run your family the same way? This is how it works. In the family co-op, instead of managing your family like a top-down corporation where mom and dad is a boss, everyone takes part in running the family and the day-to-day management. And everyone has a say in management, just like a food co-op. Now, some of you are probably saying, yeah, but I'm the parent. Well, you're still the parent. Of course you are. You're older, you have more experience. And you're there to guide your children. But you are also open to their input and to their suggestions. When you're asked for help, you give it. But otherwise, you hold back and you let them try things their way, even if it's not your way, and even if you're afraid they're going to make mistakes. Now, I know that some of you are already sitting there going, yeah, that's a nice idea, but she doesn't know my kids. And you're either saying, my kids won't help, or my kids are too young to help. So I want you to ask yourself, how does a teacher do it? How does a teacher get little tiny kids to cooperate and clean up after themselves? One reason is that she knows that they're capable of doing it. So let me tell you about this music class that I saw for 2-year-olds. At the beginning of the class, the teacher very, very specifically stated her expectations. She said, when I sing, bong, we're all going to clean up our instruments. Half an hour later, near the end of the class, she flicks the light on and off to get their attention. She goes, bong. And almost all of them neatly start putting their instruments into the little bins. And a few of them don't. They're either too involved, they didn't hear her, maybe they forgot the directions. But the teacher, unlike a parent, doesn't rush in to do it for them. She doesn't take it personally that they're not doing it. And she doesn't scold them. Instead, what she does, because she knows they're just two, she says, let me remind you, bong, that means we put our instruments away. And then eventually they all do it. So what I'm suggesting is that you do the same for your children at home. You give them the respect and the responsibility. You know, in their preschool classrooms, they're already doing it. One child is the line leader, another one is supposed to erase the chalkboard, someone else flips the calendar, someone else runs an errand to the principal's office. No one complains. In fact, they're really excited about having a responsibility. They run out of school and they go, I was the snack helper today, like they're the president. And they love it. Kids want to pitch in when they know also that the need is real, that you're not manufacturing. You know, a lot of parents will say, here, go take this and sort these socks. And they don't really need to be sorted. Children know the difference, and I learned this from my own grandson one day. We were in his backyard, and it started to rain. And I said, oh no, the cushions are going to get wet. And he just sat there because wet furniture is not a kid's problem, it's an adult problem. So he just sat there, he didn't do anything. And I went to the box to take out the covers, the chair covers, and they were heavy. So I said to him, Sam, I really need your help. These are heavy and it's too hard for one person to do. He did not skip a beat. He just was right in there helping me. We got the covers on, and when we went inside and I thanked him, you should have seen the smile on his face. He knew he deserved my thanks, and he knew that I really needed it. And he was so proud of himself. So all I'm suggesting is that you do the same for your kids. And I'm telling you, even if you're skeptical, try it. Now, opportunities like that where you can ask a child to help you do something, they happen all the time in family life. As long as you are aware of it, once you're aware. But I don't want just you to be aware. Your whole family needs to be aware. You need to start creating, and here's where your power is, to create a family consciousness within your family. And one way you do that is you start having what I call family check-ins. They're brief, 10, 15 minutes, where you sit around, you discuss something, you talk about a problem. It may even be a time when you air complaints. 15 minutes. Okay, I'm going to have to wrap this up very fast. Now I lost where I am. The family check. Now, one of the reasons I say this is that we'll sit on the couch with our children and discuss sports and tell them how to play sports. Now, I'm a big sports fan myself, but most of our kids are not going to grow up playing sports. But they will grow up running a family. every one of them. So why not teach them the skills that it takes to run a family? So you sit down and you start with, how do we get through the day? What does it take to get food on the table? What does it take to get out of the house in the morning when everybody has different places to go? When your children are old enough, even if they can't speak in these meetings, if they're under 2, let them sit there and listen. Because, you know, kids understand much more than they can speak. So let them listen. But as soon as they're old enough to take something light and carry it from the car, carry it from the table, or they're old enough to wake up an older brother or sister, they can take on helping roles. So you sit down as a family and you talk about what kind of jobs do we need, just like the preschool teacher does. We need a sweeper, we need a dog food feeder, we need a cook. Now, obviously, little kids can't cook, but they can be sous chef. They can help. And when you start to think this way, everything that was a parenting question suddenly becomes a family issue. And I'm going to take one thing I think that's very important to all of you. In a child-centered household, parents worry about screen time. How can I monitor it? How can I keep my kids off it? I'm so worried. In a family-centered household, the question changes. And it becomes, how can we use technology for our family? How do we make technology work for us? Because the truth is, screen time is not just a child problem. We're all on our phones. I've seen it today. We're all on our phones. We're all looking at screens. So it makes sense to sit down with your kids and sit in front of the computer or sit in front of the tablet and talk about places that you go in cyberspace. It's no different than you would tell them about their neighborhood. This is a safe place, this is not such a safe place. And instead of thinking about making rules, think about manners. Ask your child, what does it feel like? Because parents do this too. What does it feel like when you ask someone a question? And they're like this, and they don't look up. It bothers children, it bothers adults. So that's rude. You talk about the fact that's rude. Is it okay to have gadgets at the table? The dinner table. This is something you decide together. And how much screen time? Ask your kids' input. You'll be surprised at how wise they are. They're very, very savvy about technology. And the very important thing is children who are allowed to have a say in standards are more likely to live up to those standards. Now, again, this may be a challenge. And I don't want to end this talk without talking about this. When recently I had an interview with a journalist, and and I said to her, you know, mothers should not hold themselves responsible for how their children turn out. And she went, what? And I said, no. She said, what are you saying? Mothers aren't important? Well, of course mothers are important. Fathers are important. And they're both important for different reasons. But the truth is, if you think of the 3 factors, and this is where family think helps you, the individuals, the relationships, or the context, the only thing you can control is what? Yourself. You can't make other people like your children. You can't give your children self-esteem. You can't make them happy. You can't make your husband exercise more. You can't be charming and make him clean out the closets on a Saturday afternoon. You cannot control someone else's behavior, and you shouldn't try, because it's a losing battle. Now, you might look at your children and say, but he's already so much like me. Well, of course, your children live with you, and they watch everything that you do. But they learn from how you act and how you talk. They don't learn when you tell them what to do. fact, it's often just the opposite. You tell them what to do, they'll do just the opposite. But there are things that you can control, and that's one of the things that I want to leave you with. You can control your end of the relationship. You know, in a family of 4, there are 6 relationships. Mother and father, the mother with the 2 kids, father with the 2 kids, the siblings. That's 6 relationships. That's a lot of tending. But you can only hold up your end. So what do? Make sure you know yourself. That's one of the most important things of family life. Know what triggers your anger. Know what makes you sad. Know what you act like when you feel guilty. And then if a relationship, if something is not going too well in the relationship, stop. Pause for a minute and tell yourself the truth. What's going on inside you? Have you been here before? And if you have, do something entirely different. Ask a question, apologize. If you need to, walk away. And I assure you, if you change your behavior, the other person has to change. This goes for children or spouses. Another thing you can control is your negativity. Now, negative anger is part of life, unfortunately, but it is. You'll get exasperated at your children. Even in the best relationships, husbands and wives disagree 69% of the time. But, and negativity poisons everyone in the household. And positive interactions make everybody more open and more willing to learn. So when things start getting negative, again, walk away. Forget about giving your children time out. Give yourself a time out. You also can control what you say and what you do. And I'm going to repeat what Louis said this morning, which was, always ask yourself, is what I'm about to say or do good for this relationship? I'm not going to tell this anecdote now because it's going to take up too much time, but in the book I talk about the sticky jar thing. You get a sticky jar from the refrigerator, and your hands are all yucky, and the first thing you want to do is, how many times have I told you to put the wash jars before you put them back? Well, instead of doing that, wash the jar, put it back, and later, I'm not saying you should swallow your annoyance, but later say to everybody, I grew up with a mother who always washed jars before she put them back, and she yelled at me. As I got older, it made sense to me too. And so I would really appreciate it because it'll save all of us time. The refrigerator will stay cleaner and we won't have to do as much work. I would appreciate it if you did it too. And they might and they might not. But it's always better to let them know you need them rather than nag them. Now, I want to close with one anecdote, which is, and then I'm going to ask you one more set of questions because I have a feeling that you're all much more family-centered than you think. But when my littlest grandson was about to turn 6, his mother wanted to sit him down and ask him what he wanted for his party. And she said, no, I got it. You don't have to. Get a pencil. And I'm swear this is how it happened. And he proceeded to list all the games, they were having a backyard barbecue, all the games that they were going to play. And he then said, which was the best part, and I wanted my brothers, he has a 10 and 12 and a half year old brothers. I want them to each invite one friend so the big boys can be the coaches. And I have to tell you, I'll be honest, kids' birthday parties are not my favorite thing. But this one was fascinating because the little kids really took care of the children's activities. The parents basically cooked and watched. And it was the best party. And afterwards, I said to my 6-year-old grandson, I said, I'm going to talk about you in Brazil. I said, because it was really a family-produced party. If you let your kids, and this is the other thing, this is the most important thing that I want to tell you, you can stop micromanaging. I don't know what the Portuguese is for micromanaging, but when your children want to do something, let them. And if you have to say it to yourself 20 times a day, say it with me now. Let them. I don't know how do you say it in Portuguese?
Deixa
Say
ele.
it again. You know, I learned this from a chef in Paris, who's an American chef, and I complimented him on his food. And he said to me, you know, I have really good people who work for me. And when they tell me they can do something better, I let them. Well, you're very lucky. You work with very good people too, but even better, you love them. So let them. Let them do for themselves. Let them think for themselves. Let them make mistakes. Let them. Now, this is not going to happen overnight. Change takes time. It helps if you get support. If you're here with another mother, stay in touch. Bring this information home to your husband. But as I said, I have a feeling that you're all more family focused than you realize. So I'm going to read a couple of statements, and I would like you to stand up and stay standing if your family does this all or part of the time. All right. Stand up when you recognize yourself in this. The adults and children are involved in day-to-day family management. We listen to and learn from one another. Nobody says. We pull together during hard times. We take on family projects. We have regular, predictable family routines and rituals that bring us together. We know what we stand for as a family. See, I was right. Clearly, most of you, now stay standing for 1 minute, and I want to congratulate you and say good job, and I want you to applaud for each other, because you're already on your way. Before I take the questions, I want to just end with this one thought. Family whispering is a practice, like yoga. It will make all of you stronger and more flexible. The more that you do the poses, in this case, the practice, the habits that build strong relationships, the more that you'll see the benefits. And I want to close today. My yoga teacher closes every class with this prayer. And I went to yoga shortly before I came here, and I thought, oh, this is perfect for this gathering too. And it goes like this. May the work that we do here benefit those in our lives as well as ourselves. Amin. Obrigado. Probably I could see all afternoon talk.
Nossa, várias perguntas chiquérrimas eu criei, então a chiqueirinha. Isso aqui. Sabemos que é preciso existir equilíbrio entre razão e emoção para o caminho de sucesso nessa jornada da educação. Ou até ambos não têm esse ajuste emocional.
You know, I think the kind of question that you're asking for me, I'm a journalist, I'm not a therapist. But, you know, when you get married and you make a choice with somebody, it's a journey. You both change as life goes on. And sometimes there are bumps in the road. If somebody is emotionally, if someone emotionally is having difficulty dealing, my feeling is that they need help. You know, I know that, and sometimes you can help each other, but you have to talk about it. You have to be open with one another, and you have to be willing to stretch yourself. You know, we were talking this morning a lot about gender issues, and men do this and women do this. And in the new book, I have a whole section on gender, because yes, there's a lot of inbred or biological differences between men and women. But I don't think it's so, it shouldn't be always the woman is doing the emotional work and the man, you know, has to be coached along. I've seen many, many younger couples where the men are very sensitive, and you can help each other along, and you need to stretch yourself.
Muitas mães vivem reclamando sobre. Muitas mães vivem reclamando sobre o comportamento dos filhos, mas em geral esses problemas têm a origem no próprio comportamento dos pais. Você acha que eles estão dispostos a assumir isso e então se submeterem às mudanças necessárias? É isso, Isabel? Você acha que os pais querem mudar, né? É isso, podem mudar?
I'm not sure I agree with the premise that it's the father's fault. You know, remember I said you can't control everybody, anyone else, and maybe your child, that's a kind of general question, I would prefer more specific, but children do observe everything that you see and do. So if a child is rude, it's often because they observe rudeness. They see the other person, you know. I'm not trying to dodge the question, but without being specific, I think it's wrong to blame a child's behavior on anybody. I think both parents need to look at themselves. I think a lot of the reason that children misbehave is because people don't give them limits. Limits. Yeah, I mean, parenting is about love and limits.
Melinda, como você lida, Raul e eu lidam com o fato de muitas mães discordarem com as técnicas utilizadas para a criação e construção dessa rotina? O que você diria às mães brasileiras que sofrem com a maternidade, mas não encaram as mudanças como algo benéfico ou positivo? Como você lida?
Pode passar só se abaixa. Ah, não. Ela não se abaixa.
This question came up yesterday too.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I have to take that off when I'm talking to you because then I get the Portuguese in my ear. You know, routine is not the same as schedule. I think a lot of mothers get confused. Routine just means a predictable pattern of life. I don't expect everyone to agree with everything in all of the books. One of the most important things about baby whispering and family whispering is it tells you to trust yourself and trust your own instincts. So that's the first thing. As far as routine, when mothers say they don't agree with it, if that's their opinion, there's nothing that I can do about it. But I can tell you that routine helps everyone. You know, if you have a routine in the morning of having a cup of coffee and suddenly you can't, you know that you don't feel so good during the day. It's disruptive. And babies are the same way, and even more so, because they're just learning what life is about. So routine gives them sort of signposts, gives them cues. And I said this yesterday too, I think a lot of parents get upset when I say this, but little babies, infants, they're like puppies. You know, you don't have language. So what they need is a repetition to do it over and over again. Oh, this is nighttime. The lights are low. That's why we turn the lights off when they go to sleep. It's a cue. Babies could fall asleep with the lights open, with the lights on. But we do that to give them cues.
Melinda, não seria uma pergunta, e sim um agradecimento. Seus livros se tornaram livros de cabeceira quando minha filha nasceu. Muito obrigada, com admiração, Andréia. Andréia falou em nome de muita gente aqui. Como lidar, parabéns pelo trabalho, como lidar com avós que ao ficar com os netos mudam as regras, permitem tudo, enchem as crianças de doce, mimam em excesso. Em casa eu queria evitar doce nos primeiros 2 anos, ou pelo menos no primeiro ano. E minha mãe, a avó, coloca Nescau na mamadeira, na doce de leite. Como agir? Mata um pouquinho a tua mãe rapidinho.
I have to laugh because she said mother-in-law, not mother. Well, okay. I'm very glad that you brought up grandmother, because one of the things I wanted to say in my talk was that the family co-op includes the grandparents, but that's a whole other talk. So next year, I hope it's going to be the Seminario de Mães e Avós. So now, of course, I'm a little prejudiced here because I am a grandmother, so I'm going to speak for all grandmothers. It's very important to sit down with your parents and, you know, I would invite them to a family check-in and talk about why you do things. Now, your generation does things very differently than my generation did. We used to put kids in playpens. I don't know if you use playpens here. You use playpens? No. So you don't even know what it is. It was a little enclosure that you put the baby in.
Chiqueirinho.
Yes? And we didn't have all the gadgets that you have. Oh my God, the safety gadgets. We didn't have helmets. My kids laugh at me. When I used to take a trip with them, I'd throw them in the back seat. Nobody was in a car seat. There weren't any car seats. There were no seat belts. Somehow they lived. Now, as far as things like sweets and bedtime, I've actually heard it both ways. I've heard grandparents complain about their children, their adult children, saying, they never get the kids are up until 10 or 11 o'clock. Well, of course, all of you are baby whisperers, so your kids aren't up to 10 or 11 o'clock, right? And the other thing that they'll complain about, oh, they're so strict about food. You know, first of all, mother, your child will not die if every now and then they have a sweet, or even if over the weekend when the grandparents have them, they have too many sweets. Yes, they may be a little bit hyper afterwards, but many grandparents I don't spoil my grandsons. It's very interesting. My daughter and I parent very similarly, and I'm very fortunate that way. In fact, sometimes my grandsons will say to me, "Mommy says that to us too." But, you know, you have to relax your own standards sometimes and realize that the grandparents give your children something that you can't possibly give them, which is unconditional love. You know, grandparenting is the best job in the world. You get all the pleasure and then you get to go home. And I think you're a little jealous of that. Because it's a good deal. You know, there was a very famous book in the United States that a woman wrote, and I hope it translates well, was, "If I had known the grandchildren were going to be so much fun, I would have skipped the kids."
Muito bom. Como usar essa regra? Como usar essa regra de cooperação com adolescentes, 13, 11 anos, que não aprenderam desde cedo, são resistentes a assumir as suas responsabilidades? É a pergunta da Fernanda Vilela.
That's a hard one, but it's a great question. Obviously, it's better if you start when the children are young. But you know, teenagers are interesting. They're like toddlers. They really are. They go through a very similar kind of stage as toddlers. They want independence. They want mommy to be there when they need her. And they struggle. And if you think of your teenager as a toddler, it can help because it will remind you that even though he or she may be towering above you, as my children did because I'm short, it didn't take them much to tower above me. But what I always feel is, sit down with the kids, start having these family check-ins. They're going to roll their eyes, they're going to go, "Oh, Mom, give me a break. Did you read a new parenting book?" I mean, I know that kids actually say that. And you could explain to them that you learned that this is not parenting. Really, you have to buy into it first. That's the important thing. You have to believe that your child is capable. And then you cannot tell him or her how to do it. The other thing is, you have to know your child, and I'm assuming that whoever asked the question does. Some children at 13 could run the world, and some children at 18 still need to be told how to go across the street. So you have to know what your child's abilities are, and very gradually make them earn their independence. Kids want things from you when they're teenagers. They want money, they want privileges, they want the car eventually. And you just say to them point blank, kids really, at that age, they understand, they're like practically adults. Look, you want to be part of this family, you want the benefits of this family. You've had a pass for the last 13 years. Now it's time. I'm not going to work as hard. And I don't know what your relationship is with the father at this point, but all of us are going to pitch in together. And you do the best you can. But you'll get resistance. Just believe it yourself and it'll happen.
Vamos lá? Você acredita que a culpa e a ansiedade materna limita o desenvolvimento infantil e a família como um todo? Culpa.
Guilt is terrible. Guilt hurts everybody. It doesn't do mothers any good. It doesn't do children any good. In fact, what it does, when you feel guilty, you become afraid to give limits because you get confused. I know yesterday somebody asked me, well, I feel guilty when I leave the baby in the bed and I don't rock them to sleep, but you're really not helping the baby. And it's the same thing with a 5-year-old. If your child is, say, writing on the wall, You don't want to squash his creativity. What is the child going to learn when he goes to preschool and he takes a crayon and he starts writing on the wall? So you have to realize, to me, that the goal of being a parent, you're raising future adults. You're raising good citizens. Where do they learn this except in the family? Guilt doesn't help anybody. And I know part of this, and I have to say this, I know you have a lot of sponsors that sell children's products, but a lot of it comes from advertising. People read these advertisements, see commercials on TV, and they think they have to get this and this and this and this for their kid to grow up. And really what your kids need is your attention and your time, but not every second of the day. It's interesting, they did a study of 1,000 children in the US, and they asked the kids what they wanted from their parents. And all the parents expected the kids to say more time. They wanted their parents to be less stressed. Guilt is the biggest stress. The kids know it. They know when you feel guilty, they know when you feel stressed.
Bom, indo um pouco mais para a área dos bebês, a Melina, da Maternidade Simples, pergunta: qual é a sua opinião sobre a criação com apego, attachment parenting, que vai contra praticamente todos os conceitos da encantadora de bebês?
I'm going to play the journalism card now. Well, I am a journalist and I'm not a nanny, but I have raised children, I have grandchildren, I have interviewed hundreds of parents and been in many, many families. I am not a fan of attachment parenting. I think it's very important to bond with the baby. Who could argue with that? I mean, that's common sense. But, and I honestly think that attachment parenting has been distorted. I remember going with Tracy to one woman's house, and this woman said that she didn't want to put her baby on the ground. She was going to carry it around for the first 3 months, because that's what they did in Bali. And Tracy looked at her and said, "Love, we're not in friggin' Bali."
Thank you, Melinda. Mais uma lá? Eu esqueci de fazer a pergunta da Valentina do seminário, que é: qual é o desafio, na sua opinião, o maior desafio de ser mãe hoje, no tempo que a gente está, no mundo que a gente vive? Falando de coração, não é para especialista, é para jornalista, é para você.
Well, I think guilt is one of the biggest challenges. I think it's very hard for mothers. And I also think that part of that, everybody talks about balance, the life-work balance. It's not really about balance. A better word is integration. You're a full person. You're a mother, and you're a lawyer, or an artist, or you're just a mother, but you're a tennis player, or you do yoga. You're a full human being. And I think it's so important. Having a baby is the most life-changing event in a woman's life. But you need to hold on to yourself. That's what's so important. And your children will be the better for it. I know, I told this story that when my daughter only had one child, I came to visit her, and she had a cold, and I asked her 3-year-old, that was her only child at the time, I said, "Where's Mommy? Is she taking a nap?" And he said to me, "Mommies don't nap." And when my daughter woke up, because she was napping, I said to him, "But your father takes naps." "Mommies don't nap." Mommies need naps, and however they take them. So make sure that in every day you do something for you. And you deserve it. Because it's the hardest job in the world.
Gente, vamos bater palma em pé, Melinda.